Taiwan is in the middle of a major showdown between its cabinet and its opposition-led legislature, with the two locking horns over how much funding the government will get this year.
Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te has met with the heads of all 5 branches of government as he tries to offset an increasingly divided political atmosphere.
Now in part 1, we broke down the record $96 billion budget proposal put forward last summer. Now let's look at what's being cut. So from that proposed $96 billion, the opposition is slashing a whopping $6 billion, or 6.6% of the budget. And it's freezing another 5.1%, or around $4.9 billion. We're going to highlight 4 key changes: the Foreign Ministry's media arm, cross-strait affairs, public utilities, and defense. First, the bill took away all funding for the Foreign Ministry's Media and Policy Promotion Program and froze half of its operating budget. Why is that important? For one, Taiwan's international status is shaky, has only 12 diplomatic allies left, and China works hard to lure those remaining ones away.
国外如果说遇到中国现在需要打压我们，在国际进行各种的大外宣，但是在国内，我们的外交部却因为没有这些宣传的费用，因此无法在国际上面进行反驳，或是说来宣传我们台湾。
So Taiwan often relies on diplomacy and soft power to shape its global image and shore up more support. The Foreign Ministry also runs overseas development programs and provides help and services to Taiwanese living abroad, functions it says would be impacted by the cuts. But the opposition says the ministry spends way too much on self-promotion, what it calls internal propaganda.
我们把如果把这些公帑拿去做无用的外交，拿去做这个挺霸凌的文宣，拿去做这个所谓大内宣，这是我们不要的这个预算。
Next, it cut the operating expenses for the Mainland Affairs Council, or MAC, that's the body that deals with China, by 30% and froze another 20%. KMT lawmakers say the council has performed poorly in its duties and complain that it has refused to improve communications with China, even though it was Beijing that halted official contact between the MAC and its Chinese counterpart in the first place.
你连这个两岸之间的交流都没有办法好去做了，结果这个预算你还可以把它硬扯成这样。
But the council says it will need to limit or shut down critical functions like cross-strait student and business exchanges, its emergency hotline for Taiwanese traveling in China, Hong Kong, or Macau, medical evacuation services for Taiwanese business people in China, and crucially, efforts to counter Chinese mis- and disinformation in Taiwan.
大家都知道，中共对台宣传其实经费是无上限的。
Now on to number 3. The legislature slashed the entire $3 billion in funding for Taiwan's state-owned power utility, Taipower. The company has sustained billions of dollars in losses over the years.
Taiwan's state-owned power company Taipower posted losses of $8.75 billion last year.
Taipower made record losses of $6.3 billion. That's despite subsidies from the government totaling $1.5 billion.
Suffering from rising global oil prices and the government's insistence on keeping electricity rates low. Without government support, Taipower will likely have to charge consumers more for their electricity.
因为你台电要补助我们用电户啊，到时候我们每一个电表它如果删掉的每个电表都要多3000块出来，相对影响我们生意，结果它会转嫁到消费者。
The opposition says the company never offered a plan for how it would improve its finances, so it removed all subsidies for Taipower from the bill.
今天台电的补贴，今年是1000亿元，明年会不会是2000亿元？因为你的错误的能源政策，让台电连年的缺损。
Now lastly, remember that record proposed defense budget? The legislature froze around $2.7 billion of its total spending, and that includes half of the expected $60 million for Taiwan's domestic submarine program. Now, proponents of the program say it's necessary to build up Taiwan's homegrown defense industries and safeguard the waters around Taiwan. But it's also been riddled with issues and delays, and some have questioned whether it really meets the country's defensive needs. Opposition lawmakers are requiring that the submarine prototype complete sea tests before it allows the frozen funds to be used.
If anyone from Taiwan is watching this hearing, they need to realize they're playing a dangerous game. Okay, cutting defense spending right now is not the right signal.
So what does this all mean for Taiwan? Well, it's important to know that the budget is just one of a growing number of fierce political debates in Taiwan. And that's a result of the government being split between the executive and the legislative branches. As we covered in a previous episode, the opposition has leveraged its legislative majority to pass bills greatly expanding the body's oversight power. It also raised the number of justices on Taiwan's top court needed to issue a ruling, while blocking nominees put forward by President Lai. This has some concern that Taiwan is close to a constitutional crisis. Now, with this struggle over the budget, the country could be headed for a fiscal crisis as well. Even though the reduced budget would be a 3% increase over last year's, the premier says many of the cuts are too hard to implement, and he's asked the legislature to reconsider some, meaning this fight over government funding could continue well into 2025.